Now, it's really no surprise that the Vanguards overall are just kind of lackluster heroes if we compare them to every other class in the game. So the role of the Vanguard is to really excel at one thing and one thing only. Warden has his bashes and openers, Kensei has his wide arcs and damage, and Tiandi has their constant pressure. So what does Raider have that he brings to the table? Well, it's his unblockables from neutral, which I would say is honestly the second best mechanic behind the Wardens. Well, I mean, technically Raider does have two he does right, and it's his wide swinging heavies with hyper armor that make him really good and oppressive for team fights, but we'll get to why this isn't his best tool in the future. To really understand why Raider fell off, we really have to go back in time when Raider was the way he was today. Just like every old hero, Raider was just clunky to say the least, and if you don't believe me, go play the campaign. If you ever want to feel how the game felt day one, the campaign is the perfect place because no hero has been updated to the current state of the game. But yeah, safe to say Raider was like using sandpaper to use as a flashlight while having the same time having a hive outbreak on your... Okay, maybe I'm going too far with this. But I've made my point that getting away with murder was probably easier than playing Raider on day one. Fast forward a couple years when For Honor started to get more combo intensive, Raider got a bit more to his kit, but let's be honest, he wasn't something anyone could play. There were problems where Raider had wide arcing heavies with no hyper armor, his unblockable was able to be beaten by any light attack on startup, and his stunning tap was one of the slowest things in the game, and was basically a free parry to anyone really, opening their eyes. It was just a gamble to throw out. But if you ask any Raider player what he wanted to come back to the game, it was dodge, guard break. And I mean, let's be honest, at this point, I don't think I'd mind it returning. Basically, all dodge guard break really allowed Raider to do was just have more leniency with his dodging. See, he was able to dodge and then kind of counter guard break if he were to be caught. The timing was really small, but again, I don't think I'd see a problem with this returning. This was Raider's powerhouse move. Pairing this with old Stampede Charge, Raider played a super defensive playstyle and then would slam you into a wall. Not only did the knee from Stampede Charge drain stamina and stun you, but the whole Stampede Charge drained stamina while you were being carried. See, this is what made him so oppressive in duels, was that one guard break and you were basically out of stamina for a long time. Pairing this with Raider's neutral unblockable, stamina pause, you were most likely dead if you ran out of stamina against a Raider. But this really isn't where it ends here. See, Stampede Charge had hyper armor attached to it, making it one of the best tools in 4s, if used correctly. Let me break it down for you. If you got guard broken and Stampede charged in a team fight, the Raiders' entire team would beat the living fuck out of you till you were dead because you also had hyper armor, and any hit would not knock you out of the full animation of the Stampede charge and would only end once the full Stampede charge has ended. Getting hit by a Stampede charge was a death sentence. So here's the question you're asking. If Raider was so bad, how come you're talking about him like he was good? Well, it's because 80% of the time, Raider players back then were actually good at the game. They had a shit tier hero and had to find out how to make him click, and that is exactly what they did. He was still a really cool hero in terms of everything: voice acting, overall feel, executions. Raider, in my opinion, was still enjoyable even though he was bad. But there weren't many Raider YouTubers out there, and there aren't any more either. The Raider YouTubers that come to mind were Flux Deluxe, but he had quit a long time ago, so the only person I can think of that still is making content to this day is Blackbird. This man was a Raider main from day one, and boy did he know how to make him shine. He would post a lot of Raider montages with Norse music in the background playing Dominion and Illumination, and he would absolutely tear people to shreds with what the community said was a shit tier hero. But the sad truth was when Raider was reworked, his views started to go down and dropped to an all-time low. After all the buffs Raider started getting, everyone started to resent Raider and would curse anyone who played him in his overpowered state, making his clips in his people's eyes not as impressive as they were. Now that Raider's back to a meh state, people came back around to watching his videos, and I'm glad, because his montages were actually really enjoyable to watch. Talking about reworks, let's fast forward, give or take a couple of years, and look at Raider's first ever rework. And man, was this what the community would call a complete and utter overhaul, taking what was once the terrible hero that was to the best hero in the game for the time being. Let's go through the changes that I know from heart because for the life of me, I cannot find the actual patch notes. First things first, Raider now had hyper armor on all of his heavy attacks, basically making it so he just couldn't be interrupted every single heavy he threw. Stunning tap was increased in speed, and we'll get to that later. New chains were added, for example, heavy light to light and heavy light. And Raider's unblockable can now be changed into his second unblockable, making him the first hero to have an unblockable combo. And probably what makes Raider mains cry themselves to sleep for weeks is that dodge guard break was removed. It's crazy how even when Raider was in this state of blatant broken status, people were just too caught up on the guard break. Now, a lot of these changes are still how Raider is today, except for his stunning tap changes. These were the sole reason that Raider was such a menace, because fighting Raider looked exactly like this. See, what's funny about it is that the stun effect would actually replay itself over and over again, milking your screen, and overall the speed of the stunning tap, it was basically just a full-on prediction if Raider was going to do it or not. And Raider's damage was just nothing to scoff at the time. If you made the wrong read that he was doing a stunning tap and he was going for a side heavy, he would hit you with the force of a fucking freight train. From here, it went only downhill for Raider over and over again in the patch notes, and Raider fans were just not happy in the slightest. Stunning Tap was now removed and replaced with Storming Tap, a overall slower version of Stunning Tap with, well, no stun whatsoever. Raider also lost his Hyper Armor on Stampede Charge and Stamina Drain, and the stun effect on the knee was gone as well. Basically, Raider's normal kit was buffed in some terms and was changed, but everything Raider had that fans loved was stripped away in a heartbeat. I mean, it wasn't all downhill from Raider though. He was finally granted the ability to use a heavy attack after guard break. See, I didn't mention it, but Raider was one of the only heroes that actually didn't get a heavy after guard break. He had to go for his zone attack. The only other heroes that couldn't do this at the time were JJ and Highlander, but now all these heroes are finally allowed to do guard break and heavy attack. But see, it's not the Raider nerfs that completely made him obsolete. No. It was Orochi and Shinobi that truly shed some light on how bad Raider was going to get it. This is where I talk about what made Raider completely obsolete, and yeah, it was recovery cancels. Let me explain. See, Raider's best tool today is his ability to trade with Hyper Armor to get big damage and really put him back in the offense. The best part is that anyone that thought they can get a dodge attack in a Raider chain was just going to eat a free heavy and a lot of damage. But with heroes at the time like Orochi, Shinobi, and Berserker, they were just allowed to dodge attack him over and over again with recoveries fast enough before the Hyper Armor could land, allowing them to dodge attack again and again and again. Basically, they reworked Raider and then reworked Orochi, making him the absolute Raider counter. What made this way more apparent was that they gave the other heroes deflects that broke Hyper Armor. See, in For Honor, there are mechanics in place to counter other mechanics. In my opinion, a deflect happy player was countered by Hyper Armor by baiting them into a false insecurity and then hitting them with a Dane Apple. But this just wasn't the case anymore for Pro Raider. Now he was losing trades to his own Hyper Armor mix-ups. There are insane amounts of clips online where Orochis are dodge recovering every single Raider side heavy with dodge attacks or deflects. But it didn't end with Assassins. See, for some reasons, as much as everyone complains about dodge or cancel recoveries, they kept adding more and more to the game as time went on, making Raider's counter accessible to even more heroes. Parrot and Afira did launch with them, but not only could Afira dodge recovery out of these Raider heavies, but she was also the first hero to have mid-chain crushing counters, meaning she could dodge attack a Raider and then crush and counter the follow-up heavy attack that was going to hit her. Then we have Kyoshin and vanguard, who can also dodge attack a Raider and then go instantly into full block recovery, trumping Raider's offense yet again. Raider at this point and now has basically gone years without changes, but it hasn't stopped people from playing him. A huge amount of the community is still dedicated to heroes, and Raider is no exception. And the thing is that Ubisoft doesn't actually need to buff or nerf Raider at all. In my opinion, he's the most perfect and balanced state he's in for a long time. No, what needs to be addressed is dodge cancels. In my opinion, dodge recoveries should not work on missed attacks. The whole issue with them is that they are get out of jail free cards in 4v4s. If you're a duels player, you never really have to truly deal with things like this and the annoyance, but the dodge cancels plague the game to this day. And I know many of you would agree. If you guys enjoyed the video or agreed with anything I said, like the video, maybe pop a sub while you're at it. But nevertheless, I hope you guys have a fantastic day.